I remember the exact moment the world went silent. It wasn't a scream. It was a suffocating quiet. Jake's brother, Mark, shifted uncomfortably on my sofa. He was visiting, ostensibly to catch up, but his eyes kept flicking to the door. He was holding something heavy inside him. We were laughing about some silly anecdote about Jake, and then the air just seized up. Mark leaned in, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. He told me that Emily, Jake's ex, hadn't just been dropping by to pick up her mail. Emily was staying there, sleeping over. Mark looked terrified of me, not of Jake. He confessed that he'd been covering for Jake for weeks. He saw the ring Jake had bought me, still hidden in the safe, and he couldn't hold the lie anymore. My hands were shaking so violently I had to hide them under the cushion. I felt coldness creeping up my arms, a horrible, paralyzing numbness. Jake and I had a whirlwind romance, the kind they write songs about. I was 25, just finding my feet in the city. He was 29, charismatic, stable, and he looked at me like I was the most miraculous thing he'd ever seen. He promised me loyalty. He promised me forever. He promised me a life built on absolute trust. I believed him, every word, because who doesn't want to believe in perfect love? We had planned the engagement party for the following month. We picked out china patterns. We argued playfully over honeymoon destinations, all while Emily was apparently using his spare toothbrush. That night, when Jake walked through the door, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I was eerily calm, the kind of calm before a catastrophic storm. I simply placed my shaky hands on the kitchen counter, looked him dead in the eye, and asked, "How long has Emily been staying at your house?" The way he flinched confirmed everything Mark had said. The color drained from his face instantly. He stammered, tried to backtrack, tried to accuse Mark of exaggerating. He even tried to twist it, suggesting I was being paranoid and insecure. The gaslighting was immediate, suffocating, but I didn't break. I held the line. "Tell me the truth, Jake. Every word." He finally broke down, collapsing onto the floor like his strings had been cut. He confessed she was there, yes, but he insisted it was just platonic. She needed a place to stay, he claimed, a shoulder to cry on. I pushed harder, asking why he had hidden it. Why had he let me believe she was a ghost of the past? He had no good answer. The excuses piled up, thin and transparent. For 2 days, I locked him out. I ignored his calls, his texts, the frantic pleas he left on my voicemail. I tried to gather the pieces of my shattered reality. I tried to find the strength to walk away entirely. I knew I should. A man who lies about such a fundamental thing is not a man worthy of my future. But then he showed up at my work, tear-stained and desperate, holding a bouquet of those stupid, expensive lilies I loved. He said he couldn't live without me. He swore on everything he held dear that he loved only me. He used all the right words, the familiar tenderness, the deep, soulful stare that had once made my knees weak. I was vulnerable and he was a master manipulator. I let him back in. I told myself it was for a final conversation, a clean break. The conversation wasn't a clean break. It was a descent into pure, dizzying madness. We were sitting on the couch, the silence between us heavy with accusation and sorrow. He grabbed my hands, his grip tight, almost painful. He looked at me, not with remorse, but with a strange, frantic sincerity. "Mia, I have been agonizing over this," he whispered. "I love you. You are my future. You are my light." I pulled my hands away. "Then why did you lie about Emily?" He took a deep breath, the confession that followed hitting me harder than any punch. "Because I love her too," he said, just like that. Casual, yet utterly devastating. I never stopped loving her. She came back, and I realized I can't choose. I stared at him. Sure, I hadn't heard him correctly. My head felt fuzzy. "You can't choose." "No," he rushed on, his eyes shining with this insane, misguided clarity. "But I don't have to choose. Mia, I want to marry you, and I want to marry Emily." I laughed, a hollow, shocked sound that echoed in the tiny apartment. I thought it was a joke, a terrible, dark attempt at humor, but his expression remained serious, earnest. "I want us to be together," he insisted. All three of us, you and Emily, we can make this work. We can be a modern family. You are the stability I need. She is the fire I crave. I can offer both of you happiness. I know you love me. We don't have to lose each other. Before we continue, we would like to thank all of you who support us by subscribing, liking, and sharing our content. The only appreciation we ask of you is that you subscribe, like, and share this video if you are not yet one of our subscribers. Thank you. The air went thick. The silence returned, but this time it wasn't calm. It was the sound of a universe imploding. I looked at the man who was supposed to be my fiancé, my partner, my future, and I saw a stranger. A narcissistic monster wrapped in the familiar face of love. He was proposing a polyamorous relationship, not out of shared commitment or mutual consent, but as a manipulative way to avoid accountability. He wanted 2 wives. He wanted to keep his cake and eat mine too. I started to shake again, but this time it wasn't the cold. It was rage. Pure, incandescent fury mixed with profound humiliation. He was reducing me to a convenience, a category, an item on his list of desires. I was the safe choice, the future wife, while Emily was the secret thrill. "You are insane," I finally choked out. My voice sounded foreign, metallic. "No, I'm practical," he argued. "I'm being honest. Most men cheat and lie, Mia. I'm giving you the truth. I'm offering you a choice to stay with the man you love, under unconventional but honest terms." He truly believed he was being noble. He was so deeply entrenched in his delusion that he saw his double proposal as a gesture of radical honesty, not an act of emotional terrorism. He kept talking, describing how the holidays would work, how we could share resources, how we would eventually become one big, happy, twisted family. My mind was screaming. I wanted to scratch his eyes out, but all I could do was stare at the wreckage of the life I thought we had built. He looked at my face, sensing my disbelief, perhaps misreading my horror as hesitation. He pressed his advantage, leaning in, kissing my forehead. "Think about it, Mia. Don't throw away everything we have. Just because the packaging is different doesn't mean the love is fake. I love you and I want you to be Mrs. Mia, and her to be Mrs. Emily. It can work." I stood up, pushing him away. The proximity felt toxic. I looked down at him, realizing the depth of the betrayal wasn't just the sleeping over. The betrayal was that he fundamentally misunderstood who I was. He thought I was so desperate for him, for marriage, that I would accept this degradation. That was the deepest cut, that he thought so little of my self-worth. The day after Jake's unbelievable proposal, the anxiety was a physical weight on my chest. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jake smiling, describing the logistical nightmare of sharing a husband. Then came the call. It was Jake's father, Mr. Harrison. He was formal, his voice laced with concern that sounded genuine but also authoritative. He had heard we were having some troubles. Jake had apparently told him a sanitized version of events, a simple argument about trust, a temporary separation. He wanted to intervene. "I need to meet with you, Mia," Mr. Harrison said gently. "We need to fix this. Jake is a good boy, but sometimes he needs guidance. I want to assure you, you are the woman we want in this family. Please meet me for lunch tomorrow." The thought of meeting his father, the man who was supposed to become my father-in-law, twisted my stomach. It meant confronting the reality of the lie again, but it also presented a terrifying opportunity. Should I tell him? Should I expose the full, shocking truth that his son was planning a polygamous marriage without telling either woman the complete context? When I confronted Jake about the lunch, his demeanor shifted instantly from tearful lover to cold threat. "You are going to that lunch," he stated, his jaw tight, "and you are going to smile. You are going to tell him we had a misunderstanding and that we are working through it." "He thinks we had a misunderstanding, Jake. You proposed to 2 women. That's not a misunderstanding, that's delusion," I shouted, finally letting some of the stored emotion erupt. His eyes narrowed. "If you tell him the truth, Mia, I will leave you forever, right now. You walk into that restaurant and you tell him about Emily, and I am gone. You will lose me, and you will lose the chance to be my wife. Is that what you want?" That was the twist I hadn't anticipated. He wasn't just manipulating me to stay. He was threatening to remove the very thing I was fighting to keep. He knew my weakness. He knew the part of me that still sickeningly hoped the Jake I fell in love with would somehow return. The man who had promised the future. The realization hit me. Jake wasn't trying to protect his family's honor. He was trying to protect his own perfect, selfish narrative. If his father, a respected man in his community, knew he was proposing to Mia and Emily simultaneously, the fallout would be immense. Jake wasn't choosing me. He was leveraging my love against his potential public shame. I spent the whole morning before the lunch in a cycle of panic and prayer. I dressed carefully, not wanting to look like the victim I felt I was. Every step toward the restaurant was a battle between two forces. The voice of desperate love whispering, "Save him, save the wedding," and the clear, cold voice of self-respect demanding, "Save yourself, tell the truth." What did fixing things even mean in this context? Did it mean accepting his insane offer? Did it mean suppressing a monumental lie just to keep a ring on my finger? I walked into the quiet, upscale restaurant. Mr. Harrison was already seated, looking distinguished and genuinely worried. He hugged me warmly, a gesture that immediately made the lump in my throat expand. This was a good man. A good family, or at least a family that believed in tradition and loyalty. We talked about surface things first, my job, his golf game. Then he leaned forward, his expression softening. "Mia, I know my son can be complicated. But he loves you very much. He told me you are irreplaceable. We just need to ensure the path forward is clear." This was my moment. The trigger was in my hand. One word, one true sentence, and the entire fragile structure of Jake's deceit would collapse. I looked at Mr. Harrison's kind, trusting face. I remembered Jake's threat. "You tell him, and I'm gone." Before we continue, we would like to thank all of you who support us by subscribing, liking, and sharing our content. The only appreciation we ask of you is that you subscribe. Like and share this video if you are not yet one of our subscribers. Thank you. My heart pounded against my ribs. I thought about the life Jake wanted me to live. A life shared, minimized, constantly competing with a woman I didn't even know, all while pretending it was normal. I looked at Mr. Harrison, and I realized telling him the truth wasn't about revenge. It was about defining my own dignity. If Jake was going to leave me anyway, let him leave me standing in the truth, not kneeling in a lie. I took a sip of water, my hand steadying. "Mr. Harrison," I began, my voice clear, perhaps the clearest it had been in days. "I appreciate you wanting to fix things, but some things can't be fixed with good intentions. They need boundaries." He nodded, encouraging me to continue. "Jake and I have different definitions of loyalty," I continued, speaking slowly, deliberately. When I asked him about Emily, his ex-girlfriend sleeping at his house, he eventually admitted the truth. But that wasn't the end of the conversation. When I tried to walk away, he didn't just beg me to stay. He proposed something truly extraordinary. I paused, watching the subtle shift of confusion and apprehension in his eyes. This was the point of no return. He told me he couldn't choose between us. He said he loved us both. He proposed that he marry me and that he also marry Emily. He wants a marriage where we both exist as his wives, living together in some kind of shared, permanent arrangement. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. Mr. Harrison went ashen. He didn't interrupt. He just stared at me, his mouth slightly open, the realization of his son's profound instability crashing down on him. "He threatened to leave me if I told you the truth," I finished quietly. "But I realized, Mr. Harrison, that if the cost of being with Jake is silence, deceit, and sharing him like property, then I have already lost him, and I have lost myself." I gently placed my napkin beside my untouched plate. The quiet reflection that followed wasn't sadness. It was empowerment. I didn't need Jake's acceptance or his father's validation. I needed my own clarity. I stood up. I'm sorry you had to hear that, but I won't be part of a relationship built on lies and disrespect. I looked at him, not with bitterness, but with weary finality. Jake is right. If I tell the truth, I lose him. But if I stay, I lose everything. I walked out of that restaurant and into the bright sunlight, leaving the chaos behind me. Jake's threats meant nothing now. Losing him was scary, yes, but the relief was a tidal wave. I was heartbroken, but for the first time in months, I felt whole. Sometimes the hardest goodbyes are the ones we whisper to the person we used to be, the person who was willing to accept crumbs of affection instead of demanding the entire loaf of loyalty. That day, Mia, the girl who was willing to share her fiancé, died, and the woman who stood up for herself finally walked free.